Shivakumar sir, shall we start?
Yes, sir, we can start.
Good morning, one and all present here. Now the session topic is application of PLC in industry, handled by Mr. R. Shivakumar, CEO of Shiv Robotics. Now I introduced Mr. Shivakumar sir. Shivakumar sir has completed BE in Electronics and Communication Engineering in the year of 1997, and she has 16 years experience in Aircel as a Deputy General Manager in Technical. Now he is a CEO of Shiva Robotics. Now the session has hand over to the Mr. Shivakumar sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, audible, sir.
Sir, my screen share is available with you now.
Yes, sir. Your slide, the screen is available, sir.
Thank you. Every engineer's, there is no state called success or failure. We have only two desired outcomes. Either it is a desired outcome or it is an undesired outcome. Whenever there is an undesired outcome, there is always be an innovation being born. So this is how new innovations are being created. So if this is true, we engineers make the world. Welcome to the presentation of Industrial Automation on PLC SCADA. And I am Shivakumar from Shiv Robotics. So am I audible for everyone? Can some participants please confirm? Can anyone of the
participants, anyone? Sir, it's audible, sir.
Okay, I'll go ahead.
Okay, sir.
As you can see, this is the first slide for our session. If you are seeing the picture of a sun, which is being confined by two people, this is the picture actually I was using for more than a decade now. Whether I am working in Aircel, whether I was working in Aircel or in a freelancer. So this is the picture I was working. I was using it in my PPTs more than a decade now. The reason is that sun is having enormous potential in it, and there is no one individual can hold the potential of sun. So that is where we need a teamwork. That is where we need to share our work with each other. Together a team. A source like sun can be confined. So this is the meaning of the picture, which I am using it for more than a decade. So it's just a warm startup for our session. In this session, we are going through what is automation and what is the need of automation. If there is a need of automation, what is exactly required for us to use it to make the automation possible. So this is where the PLC is coming in, and we are going through the PLC, how it is being constructed and how it is being used and how it is useful with some practical applications. And we are completing PLC. We'll be touching where exactly we are facing the limitation, and that is where the SCADA is coming in, and SCADA will give us some more comfortness where PLC is not able to offer alone. So this is the flow of our session. You are holding the responsibility to stop me whenever you want. We can stop there and we can discuss and we can move forward. So every 3 or 4 slides, we'll have a pause of 30 to 1 minute where you can grasp your doubts and we can clarify it and we can move forward. So this is the way the presentation is going in. So we are starting the presentation now. So what is automation? The term, it is being coined in industry every often. Industrial automation or automation of machineries. So the automation term is being coined every time. So what are we expecting the automation? What are we expecting from the term automation? This is a very simple example. What is industrial automation? This is the animated picture where you can see that there are some kind of robotic arms which is working in parallel, and there is a conveyor belt which is also automatically running, where the bottles are going in and going out. In between, the process are being handled. If you are carefully watch, there are 5 tasks which is being used here in a sequential manner. First thing is that the bottle is being placed to the conveyor, and the conveyor moved to a certain degree, where the second nozzle is filling up the bottle. Again, the conveyor is moving, and the third nozzle is putting the cap for the bottle. That time, there is an external arm which is removing the bottle for packing. And this process is continuously executed in loop. Imagine if this process is being manually handled, how much people are required? Can you just imagine how many people are required? Suppose if this is the process which we would like to manually handle it. In our assumption, there will be 5 people. One person will place the bottle, and one person will switch on the roller wherever we want. Then the third person will fill up the bottle, and the fourth person will seal the bottle, and fifth person takes the bottle for packing. So there are 5 manpower requirements, where manual process takes time, and the sequence of activities, definitely there will be an error when we are executing in that sequence. So these kind of things when we are experiencing in the industry, so this is where the requirement of automation is coming in. So we are going to handle all this process in a single execution way, where this process is being smoothly handled by our routine. If this is the case, whether this automation is completely removing manpower, are we making a path for unemployment? No, this is not the way engineering looks. Engineering way of looking automation is that making the employees' workload as low as possible, as efficient as possible. We'll be retaining the same employees, but the employees will do the job with the help of automation with much more efficient way. So this is where the automation is coming in. Our industrial automations are very much essential if you are seeing this picture. Can we move forward? This is a quick comparison of what is a manual process and what is automatic process. If you see that in the manual process, there is a picture where a furnace is being controlled by a operator, and the furnace temperature is being measured in a temperature gauge which is fitted top of the furnace. So a person has to sit near to this furnace, and he has to check the temperature. If the temperature is low, he will increase the airflow in the valve. If the temperature is going high, he will decrease the valve. So this is how a manual process is being done. So if you are imagining correctly, the operator has to continuously watch the temperature gauge to make the furnace operation as optimal as possible. So this is going to be a tedious job where an experienced operator can handle it, but still it requires more energy for the operator to handle this kind of things. Suppose if we are making the whole process in the automatic way. Look at the right hand side picture, the same setup, the same furnace is being controlled by the control valve, but this time instead of operator, there is a controller being placed there in the top. The controller takes the input from the temperature gauge and it measures based on the temperature intensity. It controls the valve which controls the gas flow in the furnace. So this is the way the automatic things are being implemented. If you closely watch, this is called a closed loop, meaning we are executing the task and we are watching the result, or we are observing the result. Based on the result, again we are controlling the input, meaning this is a complete cycle. This is a closed loop. So this is a quick comparison of a manual versus automatic. If you are seeing that the furnace example was taken earlier, this kind of examples were shared in the internet. The furnace example was taken because the furnace temperature maintenance is the tedious process for the industrial industry ground. Furnace temperature can quickly shoot up. Furnace temperature can quickly come down. So this kind of anomalies will be always there in furnace because the size of the furnace area is bigger. So this is where the automation is exactly fitting in. So this kind of critical tasks which we'll be using it to automate the process. Okay. Now we have some idea what is automation, and we know that some kind of manual jobs or tedious jobs that we want to make it in an automatic way, so that the intensity of the task is being reduced and the efficiency of the output is being improved. So this is the requirement for automation. Now we are considering that we are going for automation. So what is required? There is a control is required. The controller is going to execute all these parts. So the controller means it is a very generic term. So what kind of controller should I use? There are so many manufacturers. It's about 30, 40 topmost industrial leading chip manufacturers are already there in the market. If you take an example of Texas Instruments, they have their own lineup of processors available. If you take Microchip, they have their own set of processors available. Even in fact, after merger, they have two sets of verticals. One is with the brand of Microchip, another one is with the brand of Avia. So if you are going inside the market for choosing a controller, there are so many. But the problem is that when we are choosing the microcontroller, we need to know which way we can program this. What kind of programming tools available, what kind of programming ID is available. So choosing again, first thing is we are choosing the controller. Second thing is we are choosing what type of programming setup is required and what kind of ID is required. What language are we going to use it to program it? So again, this multiplies our problem. So making things simple, this is where the PLC is coming in. This is a very general architecture. Don't bother about the micro details of the diagram. We are going to discuss in the further slides. But generally, what is PLC? PLC is a controller system which has its own CPU. It can take inputs, it can control outputs, and it is programmable, and it has an inbuilt memory. This is the very simple structural way of explaining PLC. PLC is programmable logic controller. We are programming a logic to control certain process. As we have seen earlier, we know that how we are going to execute a task, that we are very clear. You already seen the furnace example. We know that we need to measure the temperature. Based on the furnace temperature, we are going to increase or decrease the gas so that the burning intensity is high or low in the furnace walls, where temperature is again raised. So if this is the process, if we are very much clear about what we are going to do, then this logic can be converted into a programmable sequence, which we can put it in the PLC. The PLC will execute the task in a loop. So this is how the execution happening in PLC. Don't worry about microstructures of the block diagram. We are going to discuss one by one. But all we need to know is that for automating task, we are choosing PLC, which is programmable logic controller. The PLC has its CPU. This is the executing part of the microcontroller. This is the central part of the system, which is a microcontroller. It has input capabilities. It can control outputs, and it has the memory for holding the program sequence. Okay. Earlier, in the previous slide, we have seen PLC, programmable logic controller, which is in a block diagram way. How do it looks like in the real world? How does it looks like in the real world? I've taken an example of Delta PLC. This is the way the PLC looks like. It can fit in the standard DIN rail in a cabinet box, a square kind of thing. You can see that the name is DVP28SV, or they will have different names as well. So it is like a small box which has the front end connectors where each connectors are labeled separately, like X0 to X7, X10 to X17 or 16, then Y0 to Y5, Y6. So these labels are being marked in the front side with connectors. If you go to the previous slide, PLC is this architecture. The PLC has the capability to take inputs and it can take outputs. So if we come down to the actual picture which we are seeing it, the front connectors are actually catering for the inputs and outputs. And there are some small connectors and small DIN sockets which are all used for communications, which we are going to further discuss. So now what is PLC? PLC is a programmable logic controller which can take programs from the computer or programs written in the computer, inserted into the PLC, saved into the non-volatile memory. Once it is saved there, from there it starts working in loop or whichever way we are programming it. So this is the basic structure of PLC. So till now, we have any doubts? Can we move forward? If any of the participants can reply back, I can feel that the session is going live.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are moving to the next slide. So
Yes,
now
sir.
we have seen that there is a quick overview of what is PLC. Now we will go inside PLC, how it looks like. This is not exactly a center part of the PLC, but this is a controller card which is used in PLC, but don't worry about that. Still, PLC will have these kind of structures in any way. So if you are seeing that in the PLC in the real world, front side we have the connectors and some indicators and some toggle switches and DIN connectors, all these things. So if you are seeing that in the front side, we have the LED indicators, which actually shows the status of the PLC. Whether the PLC is switched on, power is there, or the self-test is done, or whether the PLC started running. If there is an error that is being detected, it will be indicated there. And there always will be a toggle switch or push type switch, which is used to run, stop, or terminate a program. And there will be a DIN connector, which most probably used for PLC communications or to program the PLC from the computer. And there will be screw connectors or WAGO connectors, which will be used for inputs and outputs. Normally, the top portion will take inputs from the external world, and the bottom portion will be used for controlling the outputs. So this is a very general architecture of the PLC. If you see that the top connectors are used for inputs, meaning the PLC can take inputs from the real world. Like in the furnace example, we have seen that we are taking the input from the temperature gauge. The temperature gauge value is being taken as an input and it is being measured inside. Based on that, the output is being controlled. So right now we are seeing the input of the PLC where we have the screw gauge connectors, screw type connectors, where the inputs are being connected. So we are generally saying that it is input. So what kind of inputs we can give? There are lots and lots of sensors and switches and all other things are available in the market. Based on the requirement, we'll be choosing the inputs. Like switches or push buttons, limit switches, photo, proximity sensors, level sensors. In our furnace example, we need a temperature sensor that is going as an input for the PLC. So there are lots and lots of input sensors available. We are choosing which type of input or which type of feedback which we want to measure it. In our case, we want a temperature sensor which we are picking up, connecting it to the PLC in the inputs. So this is the general way of connecting inputs. If you see the outputs, and it can give you the output in the bottom portion, where if you would like to control the valve, or if you would like to control a motor, or if you would like to control a contactor, whichever way you want to control it, the control signals will come out from the connector. Okay. The outputs can control the real world applications. So what will be the status of the output? Whether it is a 5 volt, 24 volt, 5 volt or 24 volt or 230 volt, which way we want to connect it. If this is the case, then we need to carefully choose the PLC. The PLC can offer you solid state SSD type of outputs where a transistor or MOSFET will be used to drive the outputs. Open collector type where the output is going high or low whenever it is triggered. If it is not triggered, it will be in the open condition. Or even relay controlled outputs are also there. So the relay controlled outputs are will not directly take the load, but the relay controlled outputs are being connected to the contactor. From the contactor, it is being connected to a motor. So we are talking about the outputs. So what kind of outputs we can use? So we can use motors, fans, controllable valves, and even if you would like to drive a display, that will be connected in the outputs only. So this kind of example of outputs can be evaluated, and we can choose it to connect to the PLC. Okay. Now we know that the PLC is a red box where we have the inputs and outputs, and we will be able to connect to the input and we can able to control the outputs. So how the PLC is executing all these things? First thing is that we are writing a program for our logic, putting it into the PLC, and we'll ask PLC to start executing it. When you say that start executing from the PLC point of view, PLC normally 99% of the PLCs will go with the self-test first. It has its own check for checking the hardware or firmware failures. If that is passed, PLC will say that I am ready. Once hardware and firmware self-test is over, it starts scanning all the inputs. This again we will be seeing in the upcoming slides how it is scanning. So we have two sets of connectors, right? In the PLC. Top portion is the input connectors and the bottom portion is the output connector. So the input scan will start. It will start scanning all the inputs and keeping the status of the input pins in the memory. Then after that, it starts reading the LD execution sequence. What is LD? The new term is being introduced in this slide. So far, we are talking about programming and programming and programming. No technical word has been given so far. The third term which says that LD execution sequence. Up to this point, we know what we discussed. But the third point says it is a LD execution sequence. Anyone can elaborate what is LD?
Ladder diagram, sir.
Sorry?
Ladder diagram.
Ladder diagram. Okay. Perfect. So this is a ladder program. We are going to see shortly what is ladder program. So when we want to make a logic which is executable in PLC, we will be writing our logic in ladder program and compiling it, putting it to the PLC for execution. So if this is the case, first PLC completes its self-test. Then it starts scanning the inputs and update the memory. Then it starts evaluating the LD sequence. The LD sequence is where exactly we are putting the logics. So the ladder logic is a set of functions, and it has its own sequence, which will be there inside the program. Once PLC starts analyzing it, it takes the input scan as input, and it takes the appropriate action based on the LD logic. Don't confuse with the LD right now. We are going to see it later. What we are understanding is that there is a programmable sequence which is available in the third step. The programmable sequence which evaluates the inputs and takes the corresponding outputs. So it is getting ready with the corresponding outputs. In the fourth stage, it outputs it goes for the output scan. In this output scan, whatever the outputs needs to be switched on or switched off, all these controls will be executed in the fourth stage. You can see it in the right hand side picture. It starts with self-test, input scan, then after that logic scan. Logic scan is nothing but our own sequence. If you take the example of furnace, the logic scan contains measuring the temperature, that is the input. If the temperature is low or high, based on that, valve needs to be switched on or switched off. This valve switched on or switched off will be executed in the output scan. Can we move forward? Okay. Till now, something we were discussing about PLC, how it is being executed. So this is, if we have a rough idea how the PLC is working. How do we connect it in the real world? So this is the overview of a connection of PLC. We'll be taking inputs from temperature or push buttons connecting to the PLC. In the output side, it will be controlling the motor. PLC cannot directly control a single phase or three phase motors. That is where the contactor is coming in. You can see that there is a white color box between the motor and PLC. This is the contactor, where the contactor is being driven, and it in turn drives the motor. And we have the lamp also connected, which you can use it for indicators. So this is a quick example. Okay. Now how the PLC are doing all these things? We have seen that in the first phase, PLC scans inputs. So this is how it scans. It starts scanning one by one, one by one, one by one. What is the status of the input? The input will be returned into the memory. Don't worry about the bottom portion. That is the ladder diagram that we will be discussing later. So if you see that there was a switch, there is a switch in that input circuit, which was earlier 0. Now the switch is being pressed. Now the first bit is set to 1, and it starts scanning all the inputs. Now we know that the first switch is first input is being pressed, which is 1. If the first switch is triggered, then we know that the output has to go high. So this is the case. In the fourth sequence, when it is scanning the output, it writes the output to the output pins. So this is how a general PLC sequence is being executed. If you see that the whole process being programmed in a single ladder diagram in the bottom. What you are seeing a single ladder diagram, this is all it is required for us to execute this task. If you put this ladder diagram, compile it and put it in the PLC will act like the way it was simulated. If you press the button, output will be on. If you release the button, output will be off. For that, this single line of ladder piece of code is required. Okay. This is slightly complicated. Earlier we have seen that there is only one switch and one output. Now we have multiple inputs and multiple outputs. So this is how the real world implementation will be there. We'll be utilizing all the inputs for different purposes, and simultaneously it can control the DC motor, AC motor, water pump, whatever way we want. So in short, if you see, the PLC required normal power supply range of 24 volts, which is connected to the PLC, and we have inputs and outputs, which is connected to switches and outputs. So far, we have seen some of these things in PLC. Now, a quick question is that I know how to program microcontroller. I know how to design my circuits. I can do all these things in my own way. Why should I go for PLC? Whether the PLC is cost effective or PLC is much more superior than what microcontrollers can offer. What is the main advantage of going to PLC? The main advantages are bulleted here. First one is simple wiring. When you're going for microcontrollers, first thing is we need to design our own PCBs and we need to make it as a structural way of connecting to the real world. That is one of the tedious process every engineers in the field experiences. When they are going for their own PCBs and own designs, normally they'll experience this kind of things. So this is where PLC is taking more advantage. A simple way of doing wiring. It groups all the inputs and outputs into screw connectors, and it has a very structural way of connecting everything. Second thing is easy programming. We can see that in the previous slide. All these sequences are being written in a pictorial way, like a ladder diagram in a single line. So it is very easy to program. If it is easy to program, can it handle complicated tasks? Of course. Easy programming doesn't mean that it can only take easy tasks. Easy programming means we are simplifying the programming way the PLC's controller is going to work. But that doesn't mean that we are not taking complicated tasks. It can take any complication that we are throwing in terms of logic. And third thing is it's robust and reliable. The reason is that it is being properly manufactured and properly grounded and properly shielded. So it is ready for the field directly. And fourth thing is cost to feature ratio. If you take cost of the PLC directly, it won't match compared to microcontrollers. Microcontrollers are cheaper and it has more and much more functions available compared to PLC. We can programming whatever way we want in controllers as well. But if you check the cost to feature ratio, like putting it in the field as quick as possible, and easy serviceability and easy swappability, all these things, if you are taking it as a feature, the cost to feature ratio will be very exciting. And the fifth point is that it is a modular, meaning I choose a PLC, I program and put it in the field, but whenever I want a new inputs, which is not available with the basic PLC, I can simply add one more card and I can expand it. If I want more outputs, I can simply add one more card for output and I can expand it. If I need a specific communication which is not available in the basic module, it is possible to extend it. So it is very modular. And as we discussed, it can handle complicated loops. We have seen the furnace example. The furnace example, when we are seeing it in the employee point of view, it is a complicated one. But when we are converting it to the PLC, it is a simple way of doing execution. So all complicated loops can be easily programmed in PLC. Suitable for all fields. That is one of the major advantage of PLC. Whether it is a medical field or it is a home automation or it is going to be a industrial thing which is catering different types of segments like water treatment plants, Thor metal, Thor furnace plants. So whichever way, whichever field you choose, the PLC is suitable for there to adopt. And the last one is very important. Its communication capabilities. It can handle almost all types of communications which is available in the market. If the communication capabilities are not there, since it is modular, it is possible to extend its communication capabilities as well. The last point which I specifically put, the reason is that now the IoT is booming, that we are going to cover shortly. So IoT and cloud platform and all these things are being picked up. The communication and protocol capability should be modular so that whenever I require, I will be able to add it and keep up with the technology upgrades. So these are all the main advantages of PLC if compared to any other platform which is available in the field. We'll be moving to the next slide. So now we know that we need to do automation in the industry. For that, we are choosing PLC and how PLC is being manufactured or presented and how it is executing the tasks. And we know that how it is being put it in the field. Till now, you have any questions? We are moving forward for industrial application examples. So if you have any clarity required in this till now, we can discuss and we can move forward. Okay. So now we already presented that PLC has the advantage of simple wiring, easy to program, and even it can take complicated tasks. So in this point of view, we will start examining some of the industrial applications which we can implement it in the PLC. So hope you are all seeing this diagram. This is a bottle manufacturing plant where the bottles are being examined. If the bottle bottom is not flat or any other defect or any other way the bottle is not in the vertical position, the bottle is considered as defective or it is going to be recycled. So when we are doing this kind of automation, the bottles are manufactured and put it in the trolley, which is going from left to right. So our task is that we need to identify the standing bottles, which we are assuming that the standing bottles are perfectly formed. If the standing bottles are not there, that means the bottom is not correct, so it is falling. So if this is the case, if there is a defective bottle, we are seeing that we need to reject it to the reject bin, where it will be used for recycling. So this process, if you are doing it manually, we have to put the manpower to check all these bottles in the visual inspection, and somebody has to take action against it. So now our task is that the bottle is coming in the conveyor, which is slowly moving from left to right. The conveyor controller is not implemented here because it is always on. It is continuously running. So no control required from the conveyor. If the bottle is not there in the standing position, that bottle has to be rejected. So this is our task. If this is the task, you can see that in the bottom control program, this is the ladder code it is required. So before jumping into that, we know that this sequence we need to program it, and for that some kind of programming ID is required. And for PLC, we are choosing ladder logic. So how a ladder logic will look like? So everybody can see me. Can you see that the new screen? There is a new IDE screen which I am sharing. Can anyone confirm that you will be able to see my new screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is a okay. This is the Open PLC editor, which is freely available in the internet. You can download it, or at the end of the session, I can share you the link where you can download it and you can experience in your own way. It is a complete package. It can run as a standalone package. You can experiment with ladder programs, whatever you want. So the idea is that this is the editor where we are converting our logic into some way of logical executions. Then we compile it and put it in the PLC. For PLC, we are choosing ladder logic or ladder diagram as a programmable way. And this editor will facilitate us for doing this. So I'll just show you some examples on that. So this is what we call a ladder diagram or ladder logic. So in that, if you see that our execution tasks are presented in a pictorial way. We have some kind of logics. That logic we need to build it as a sequence, compile it and put it in the PLC. That is our ultimate requirement. For that, we can use a ladder logic as a programming IDE. You can see there is a pictorial way of representing our task. You're able to see the blue color mark, which I'm highlighting it now. So ladder logic starts from left to right, where the left side rail is marked here. So this is the start of our logic. The topmost portion is the start of our logic, where we are connecting some switches in sequence, and then it is connected to the output. So meaning the ladder logic will start executing from the task. First it checks the switch status of switch 1. Then it starts checking the status of switch 3. Then it starts checking the status of switch 2. If some kind of logic we formed here, which is true, then the output is set. If the logic which we have defined here, it is not set, the output will not be set. So this is how a ladder is being pictorially represented. If we go into this first portion, this ladder diagram, so the first line will be executed. If this is executed, then the scanning will start from the second line. The second line will have some kind of components connected in. This portion will be executed. Once this is over, then the loop repeats again. It goes for the first one and starts checking. So this is the way we present a pictorial way of doing a programming, which is called ladder diagram. A ladder diagram will start from left to right, where the ladder diagram, first it is being connected. In the first line, if you see, there is a group of switches connected here, and there is output. So how do we program our logic? Say for example, I have 3 switches connected in the first line. I want the first switch should be in on condition, and third switch should be in on condition, and second switch should be in off condition. If this is the sequence, if this is the logic it meets, then the output is set. This is what we are doing this logic here. I am repeating again. In the ladder diagram, we are pictorially representing our logics, and the logics are being formed with the group of components. This components represents our logic. If our logic meets in this group, then the output is switched on, or whatever task we want, it will be executed. So in our example, in the first line, we have connected switch 1 and switch 3 and switch 2 logics, where switch 1 if it is on, switch 3 if it is on, switch 2 if it is off, then the output will be switched on. So this is how the loop is programmed here. If you again see that, I'm just zooming it out. The first line, first I'm connecting the switch. You can see that the symbol, it is like a capacitor symbol. So this symbol represents, I want to check the status of the switch, which is normally in open condition, but when it is being triggered, it will close the contacts. This is what it represents. Switch 1, which is normally in open condition, but I need to check whether it is being closed. For that, we will be using this symbol, which is connected again to the switch number 3. Switch number 3 also in the same state. I need to have switch 1 and switch 3 to be switched on. Then it is connected to switch 2. The switch 2 is normally in closed condition, which I would like to check whether it is in open condition or closed condition. Normally, if switch 2 is in closed condition, if it is in the open condition, then the status is true. So this is how it is being formed. If these 3 switch logics are met, then the output is switched on. You can see that this is the output where our real world device is connected. There is a open bracket, close bracket kind of thing, which is called coil. You can see that, create a new coil. The coil means it is the output pin. Either the coil will be dynamic or it can be set or reset. You can see that I put yes here, which means it is set. One time if the logic is being triggered, the output is being set and it will be there in the same state forever till we are disconnecting the power and reconnecting or some way of doing reset. But if you would like to have the output as dynamic, if this logic is being executed, output will be high. If the logic is not there, output will be low. So it is a dynamic one. Can we change this? Yes, it is possible to change. If I am double clicking the output section, I have a set of options available here. I can make it as normal. That means it is dynamic. I can make it as inverted, meaning if I send 1, output will be low. If I am sending 0, output will be high. So inverting the output is also possible. I can set it or reset it, or even I can make a sharp rise edge and sharp fall edge like a pulse. So in our example, I put as set. That means if I am triggering it, output will be set and it will be there in the same state. The interesting thing is that most of the ladder diagram IDEs are coming up as free tools. All PLC makers, they are supplying their own programming IDEs, and all IDEs will support ladder diagram programming. And all these things are almost always available as free. If you take Delta PLC, they'll be giving you a programming examples, and they'll give you all kind of IDEs and softwares which is required for programming it. And if what you're seeing is that it is called Open PLC. Open PLC is a group of people formed, and it is being shared as open source, which you can download it and you can run it with your own way of testing it. And most of the IDEs will come up with the simulation. That is very interesting part. Before putting into PLC, you can form all these logics in this IDE, run it, verify it, whether it is working fine, then you can put it in the PLC. So in our case, we have formed some kind of logic here, which you would like to simulate it. So there is a button for starting the PLC simulation, which I'm clicking it now. You can see that in the console part, it is actually building the firmware here from the ladder diagram into programmable way. So now it is programmed and the PLC is started. You can see that here. And we would like to check the status of the switches, right? There are 3 switches and 1 output. This is the debugger window in the right hand side here. So don't worry about all these windows and all these things. We all experienced in doing IDEs. So you can download it and have a look on that. It is very easy to understand. So this ladder diagram you are seeing here, it has started executing, it is running. You can see that the clock is ticking here. And these are all the inputs and outputs already. We formed it in the PLC here. Switch 1, switch 3, switch 2. Now we need to know the status of the switches. You can see that we have switch 1, switch 3, and switch 2. These are all the switch status. Switch 1 is in false condition. That means it is normally open, which is not closed so far. Switch 3 is also in false condition, which is normally not connected, which is again in open condition. Switch 3 is normally closed, which means it is already conducting these two, but the status is false. That means if I'm making it true, the switch will open. This is the inverted condition here. So if I want to switch on the output, I need to switch on S1, S3, and switch off S2. If this is the sequence, my output will be on. As of now, my output is in false condition. So how do I do that? I just click the switch, right click, force it to true. That means I'm switching on the first one. And I'm clicking switch 3, right click, force to true. Now you see switch 1 is in on condition, switch 3 is in off condition, switch 2 is in off condition, means these two are in on and the third one is off. If the logic is true, my output should go high. You can see that our output is already going high. Okay. Here you see that we make output as a latch, means output will be always on. If I'm reversing the condition, meaning switching off the S1 and S3, output is still in true condition only. The reason is I make it as a switch. So this is how we form our logic. This is a simple example of making a group of switches to control the outputs. Now we go back to our slide. So in this industrial example application, we know that how the ladder logic is being formed. In our case, we have two sensors attached here. X0 is one sensor, which is triggered when the bottom portion is available. X1 is triggered when the top portion is also available. So there are two sensors which is measuring the whole bottle area. The bottom portion confirms that the bottom portion of the bottle is available. The top portion of the sensor confirms that the top portion of the bottle is available. So we have two sensors. Our requirement is that when X0 and X1 both are in triggered condition, the pushing arm should not be executed. If any one of these sensors not available, meaning X0 is available, X1 is not available, that means I need to execute this arm to push the bottle to the recycle bin. So this is the logic it is required. Detecting the standing bottle on the conveyor and pushes the fallen bottle out. So this is what we are going to do. For that, the ladder diagram is very simple. Starts from left. We are checking X0 whether it is on or off. Normally in open condition, when the bottle is available, it will go into closed condition. The second sensor is where we are taking a very interesting step. We are making it as a normally closed condition as switch. If the bottle is available, it will be in open condition. If the bottle is not available, it will be in closed condition. Meaning, if you see that X0 is already detected whether the bottle is standing position or fallen position. This is always triggered. That means it is already connected. X1 will be released open if the bottle is available. X1 will be closed if the bottle is top portion is not available. That means the whole sequence will execute when the bottle is in the bottom condition. That means it will trigger Y0. The Y0 is nothing but a pushing arm which is connected to the motor. If the logic is being executed and if it is true, then the output will be executed. The arm will push the bottle to the recycle bin. So this is our first simple industrial application. Till now, you have any doubts? Are we going in the right direction? I think we are touching 54 minutes as of now. So we have another 35 minutes to cover. So if the speed is okay, then we'll go in the same speed. Any doubts, or we'll move forward?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. We are going for the second application. Most of the people might has seen this kind of switching in our staircases. We'll be putting bidirectional switches in staircases. In the bottom floor, we'll be having a bidirectional switch. On the top level also, we'll have a bidirectional switch, where one switch will be used to switch on the bulb. When we are moving up, we can use another switch to switch off the bulb. So there is a crisscross way of switching it on and off. So how do we simulate it, or how do we execute it in PLC? You can see in the staircase, we have two switches, X1, X0 and X1. I can use this switch to change the state of the bulb. If I am moving up, I need to switch on the bulb. So I will change the state here. So I will go upstairs. Then again, I will do the change here. Whether it is on or off, I will be changing it. It's a bidirectional switch. If I am changing the state here, the bulb is off. If I am coming down, I'll change the state here. Bulb is on. Coming down to the ground floor and again change X0, the bulb will be off. So meaning there is a logic required to form, so that if I am changing the switch of any of these two switches, the state of the bulb should change. That is the idea here. If I am changing the status of the switch, the current bulb status should change from high to low or low to high. So how do we do? So if you carefully see that there are two switches there. If both switches are there in the same state, whether it is an on condition or it is an off condition, if both are there in the same state, the output will be high. If any of these things in a different state, output will be low. So this is the key point here for forming our logic. This is where our talent is coming in. We need to see the problematic situation and form our logic and programming it. So how do we do? We know that if both the switches are in the same state, output will be on. If these two switches are in different state, output will be in off condition. That is how it works. So if you see the ladder diagram, the first line, we are seeing that X0 and X1. If both are open condition, but if both are in on condition, output will be triggered. Another condition, both are in off condition, which might go from off condition to on condition. This is the second state. Both are directly parallelly connected to the output, which means if these two, any of these two sequences are matching, output will be on. If any of the sequences is not matching, output will be off. So if we are executing this task in ladder diagram, X0 is on, Y0 is already in on condition. That means if both are in on condition, output will be on. If both are in off condition, output will be on. If any of the switches are not in the corresponding position, output will be off. So this is another application where you can control bidirectional way of lighting. Are you able to follow? Or any explanation is required further? If we have time, we can do the online simulation as well for this example. But we'll see that. Already I think we are touching 1 hour now. So if we have time, then I think we can try executing this kind of programs live in our PLC editor. But meanwhile, we'll try to complete as quick as possible so that we'll have some reservation period in the end. So we can try this examples live. Okay. So we are moving to the next slide. So this is a second application we are seeing. Third application is also a very interesting one. You can see that. There is a tank. The tank holds water. All we need is that we are connecting a pump and we want to pumping out the water from the tank whenever we want. And one criteria here is that if the tank is having enough water, then the pump should on and it can do a water supply if I want to switch it on. But if I'm switching it on, but the tank is not having enough water or water is not there or it is empty, the motor should not on. So that is the criteria here. So I need to switch on the motor and I need to switch off the motor whenever I want so that I can pump the water from the tank to the outside. That is first thing. Second thing is that even though I'm switching it on the motor, if the tank is not holding the water and it is empty, the pump should not be in on condition. So this is the logic. It is being presented to us. Now we need to form a automation here. Now imagine how a manual process will do this. A person will be there. Before switching it on the motor, he has to supervise the tank, whether water is available in the tank. The water is available, then he goes there to the switchboard and switch on the motor. And again he will come back to the tank and he supervises whether the tank is empty or still holding the water, or for some time the motor is running, then he decided to switch it off. So he will go to the switchboard and switch it off. So this kind of loops will be manually done if we are doing it the manual way. So if we are going for automated way, we have a sensor attached to the tank which monitors the water level. You can see that there is a sensor attached to it, X2, which is a simple float. The float will go down if there is no water, or the float will go up if we have enough water. So this float is taken as an input and we are connecting the pipe to a centrifugal pump or monoblock pump which sucks the water and push it outside. All these things are being controlled in switches. One switch to start the motor, another switch to stop the motor. If I am starting the motor, I need to check the sensor. If I have enough water, then only I will switch it on the motor. When the motor is running, the tank is going empty, I immediately switch off the motor. Or if I am manually overriding and switching it off, that time also the motor should go off. So this is the example. If you go into the previous examples, we started building our program in a complicated way. Earlier, in the first example, there is a very simple sequence. We have only two sensors, which is directly correlating to the output. We have done that. In the second example, we make slightly a complicated way of doing automation, where two switches are connected, different states are being measured, and the output is controlled. In the third example, again, we are complicating some more things, which has one input and one output and two switches. So our logic is that first we need to check whether start switch is being pressed. That is the first criteria. If you see the ladder diagram in the first line, first we are seeing whether start switch is being pressed. If start switch is being pressed, then immediately I will go and check whether the tank has enough water. That means the sensor is connected here, X2. I first check whether the start switch is pressed. Then I check whether the sensor is reporting me enough water. If both things are there and stop switch is in off condition, then this logic will be executed where I will set the motor Y0 to on condition. So this is the first line. I am pressing the start button. I am checking that I have enough water in the tank, and I am ensuring that stop switch is not pressed. If these logics are matching, I am switching it on the motor, and the motor will start pumping the water out. Now we have stop switch available here. Whenever I want to stop this, whenever I want to stop the motor, I press this one. This has to be detected, and I need to switch off the tank. So what you are seeing here in the first line, if the logic is met, I'm making the output as set as permanent. That means a status change once it is set will not be affected by the first line. Meaning the logic is executed, output is latched, permanently running. Now I need a way to stop the motor, which is already latched. For that, what we are doing, we are checking the stop switch. If the stop switch is pressed, then I'll make a one cycle pulse. That means a mono pulse will be generated. If X1 is pressed, I will be generating a mono pulse, a single pulse. That we are taking it as a variable M0. If the M0 is having a pulse, in the third line you see, the logic is executed from top to bottom. First line is already executed. Now we are in the second line. Second line, it is checking the stop switch. The stop switch is triggered. We are generating a mono pulse. The mono pulse will be in the third line, which is resetting the output. So if I momentarily press the stop switch, it generates a pulse. That pulse will reset the output. So this is a manual method of start and stop. So what do we have in our sequence? We have another logic, right? In doing a manual on-off button, we need an automatic way of switching it off the motor as well, if the tank is empty. So where do we incorporate this? This sensor is being connected in parallel to stop switch, but the status is inverted here. So this is the interesting part. You have to invert this and connect it in parallel to X1. That means if tank is having enough water, the logic is high. That is required for switching it on. If the tank is empty, the logic is low. That is being used to generate a pulse in parallel to switch stop. So this sensor also will generate a mono pulse when it is triggered. That will reset the motor. So now we can understand how the PLC is making the automation as easy. If we are doing it in a programmatic way, we need to create a variables and we need to assign the variables and starts reading it. And based on that, we need to control the output, which will be there in the programming language way, like C++ or C, or some way in BASIC or in Python, whichever programming language we are touching it, we need to implement this logic. But for PLC, we pictorially form our logic and interconnect all these things to execute the task. So this is where the power of PLC lies. So this is one of the examples which you have seen that how the automation process running. So you can imagine that this ladder diagram can be extended for complicated tasks as well. So till now we have seen 3 examples. So you have any doubts or we'll move forward? Okay, we are moving forward. Till now what we are seeing is that programming a PLC, understanding the logics, and how a simple task can be executed in PLC. So far, what we understood is that the PLC is being programmed in the field, and it is being deployed in the field, and it is being controlled in the field. Meaning, the physical presence of PLC is there in the field, and the operator who is operating this also present it in the field. So how do we make it as a remote operation? We cannot put manpower always there in the field. Take an example of wind generator. The wind generator is being placed in some remote location or some hill station or some forest area where people will not be there always. People will go there, install it, and do some kind of maintenance work, and they'll come back. But still, the operation to be controlled remotely. How do we do that? The reason is that the PLC can be deployed, but it is there in the field itself. If you want to control it, you need to go there and control it. So how do we remotely do that? Anybody has any idea? How do we do that? Okay. So this is where we are introducing IoT. It is called Internet of Things. So this Internet of Things whether this term is new to the engineering field, whether it is recently invented, because the IoT we are hearing about the last 4 or 5 years, it is being floated in the internet very heavily. Whether this is a new kind of innovation that has happened, no. Internet of Things are already there in 1980s. We already connected our devices to the Ethernet. We already connected some of our devices to other devices via 433 megahertz or 1 gigahertz frequencies. The connectivity is already there, but during that period, it was not structurally formed. Now we are forming in a structured way where each device is being connected remotely in a proper way. So what is Internet of Things? Internet of Things means we have a kind of device which has the capability to connect it to the network like internet, and it has the ability to transfer the data of its sensor data to the remote location, or it can take control commands from the remote location and execute it. A simple example will be a Wi-Fi bulb, which you can see that in Flipkart or Amazon, which they are selling it. A normal Wi-Fi bulb which is connected to your home Wi-Fi network. From your mobile, you will be able to control your bulb status. Either you can switch it on or switch it off, or you can change the intensity. When you are changing the intensity, the bulb will report back at what intensity it is operating. So that feedback can come back to the application of your mobile where it will be displayed. So in short, Internet of Things is that making the device, making the sensor which is capable of connecting to the network, where we will be able to get the data or do the commanding. So what exactly Internet of Things do? Collect and send information, receive and act upon the information, or it can do both. And a simple Wi-Fi bulb, it can only work one way. It can take only command. It will not send you back any feedbacks. I can switch on the bulb or I can switch off the bulb. It can take the command, it will execute, but it will not give you a feedback. So that is one kind of execution. Another kind of execution is that I can take command, execute it, and I can send you the result back. That is also possible. So Internet of Things capable devices can do collect and send information like sensors with IoT, or receiving and acting upon the information like Wi-Fi bulbs, or it can do both. A sensor data and bulb which is both connected to the same system, where it can give you the feedback as well as it can control. So why do we now introduce IoT? We were discussing about PLC. Suddenly we are changing our gears to IoT. So what is the need? Because PLC is field deployed. Somehow we need to remotely access and control it. So this is where the IoT is coming in, and the IoT is happily pairing with PLC without any hiccups. The reason is that if you remember in the 4th or 5th slide, we were telling about PLC has all communication modules available. That means the PLC can easily integrate itself to IoT devices because we have enough communication modules available in PLC, which is again modular. So PLC will take the heavy tasks like execution, the logics, making the automation of the industries, all these things will take, but controlling and the remote viewing can be done with the help of IoT. So this is exactly what we are seeing in an exciting way. So the IoT can complement PLC to make the remote operations simple. So this is what we were discussing about things. Controlling lights, it is not only domestic problems, it is again the industrial problems as well. Industries are using lots and lots of high wattage bulbs, but once it is switched on, nobody takes care whether the lighting is required or not required. So some kind of supervisory thing is required. Whether the lighting is required, that time the light will be stay in on condition. If it is not required or if there is no manpower in the room, the light should be switched off. So that kind of automations are very much required, which saves enough energy for the industries. So lights with the smart controllers can do this. The smart controllers, what we are meaning is that it is a PLC. A PLC which is set in the area, specifically controlling lights, which connects to all bulbs. Based on the logic which it is taking from the input, it can control the bulbs. Whether it can switch it on in the late evening 6 o'clock, and it will automatically switch off at 10 o'clock. This is the first logic. Second logic, in this logic, 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, if after 10 o'clock people are present in the room, instead of switching off the bulb, it will wait for people to leave. So the second logic is again formed and it is being imposed to the PLC. And third logic will be, if the bulb is in switched off condition, if there is any movement detected, the bulb is again switched on for a short period. So this is the third logic. So these kind of logics can be formed, and with the help of a ladder diagram, we can form it in a single structured way, program the PLC, and PLC will control the bulbs. Now, these kind of things can be connected to the Internet of Things IoT, where we can manually override or manually change the logics in the remote location with the help of mobile applications or web browsers. So this is where the IoT is complementing PLC. So this is for example of controlling lights. And this is the most interesting part which is picking up in the recent years, energy harvesting. If anybody aware of this term, energy harvesting? This is a very interesting topic. Energy harvesting is that gathering all the free energies which is available around us and making it as a usable power source. So what kind of energy things are present around us? Solar is always there. In industries, thermal energy is always there because machines are running. One way or the other way, we can convert the thermal energy to electrical signals, and vibrations of machines will be there. So how do we convert the vibrations into usable energy? So that is another thing. And of course, we have the wind energy available, which is standard. So these are all the energy sources which is available, which we need to convert it into a usable energy. So we need to have an aggregator where it takes all four informations and make it as a usable energy, aggregate it, and passing it on to the usable things. So where exactly PLC is coming in now? We have energy harvesting diagram we put. So where exactly are we going to place our PLC? The PLC is going to do the harvesting job. It takes 4 inputs. It decides which input is having enough energy, and it aggregates it and sending into the output section. But the PLC is not going to buck or boost the output. It only aggregates and forwarding to the output where we will be taking actions. So how do we speak about the free energy now? Because the free energy is free. It is always available with us. If you are not using it, it is being wasted. Have you ever wondered at what time the sun rises in the east? It rises around 7:30 or 8 a.m. and it sets around 6 p.m. So all this around approximately all 12 hours, it is throwing energy towards us. If we are not capturing it, every minute the energy is being wasted. But nobody will complain because it is a free energy. But in either case, it is wasted. So this is where the energy harvesting is coming in. The energy harvesting is having very interesting results also. If we are properly implementing energy harvesting, a part of the power source for an industry can be operated from this. So this is where the new interesting research are booming in, where PLC is scattering its purpose here in energy harvesting. So this is already discussed in energy harvesting. And this is one of the very interesting topic for PLC as well. The water and the rain. When we were doing a calculation for a 1,000 square feet open area for a normal house to use our water usage. A normal house normally consumes 1.5 liters of 1.5 lakh liters of water in a average usage for a year. For a house to operate, they are consuming 1.5 lakh liters of water, which is somehow being procured now from the underground or reservoirs, whichever way. But in Tamil Nadu specifically, maybe people are participating in other than Tamil Nadu as well, but I'm considering Tamil Nadu. If we are considering Tamil Nadu, here the rainfall is coming under 850 millimeter to 950 millimeters. It is coming in this range. If I'm assuming that the bare minimum of 850 millimeter rainfall throughout the year, if I have a open terrace which can hold 1,000 square feet of water, if I am doing a proper way of reservoir monitoring and reserving the water in the underground, I'll be able to generate 1.8 lakh liters of water per year. So this is where the interesting things coming in. So if we have 1,000 square feet space available for a home, and if you are properly reserving the rainwater for a year, you'll be getting 1.8 lakh liters of water, but we are going to use 1.5 lakh liters in average. So meaning you no need to have a borewell. You no need to suck your underwater reservoirs. You no need to always monitor your water river reservoirs. So these things are now being reserved for your backup. The rain water itself is more than enough. Okay. Now that is interesting part. Then where exactly PLC is coming in here? Now the critical task is that we need to measure each and every parameters. Rainfall, how much rainfall I am getting throughout the year. First I need to measure it and I keep my data ready. And I need to know that this much of rain has already got for the year and how much water I saved it in the sump. If the sump is full, I need to move the water to the overhead tank whenever it is required. So I need to do these cycles continuously so that the process is not getting stopped anywhere. If we are doing this critical task for the year without any interruption, then we will be able to have 1.8 lakh liters of water for the year, which is more than sufficient for a normal house. So this is a very interesting topic here. So this topic shoots for IoT as well as PLC, because the IoT is need to be integrated with PLC. PLC is actually controlling this. You can see that the top portion of the house, which is actually getting the water. So we need to place the sensor to measure how much millimeter of water is being generated here. This is connected to the PLC, which actually takes the input and how much water I am sending into the sump. Sorry, sump. Here again I have a float, which I am monitoring the level of the water. So whenever the sump is going full, I will transfer this water to a overhead tank where another reservoir will be used. This reservoir is the actual server for home. And whenever there is an overflow, I will pass this overflow to some of my garden works and other things. So this way, I need to form the logic, put it in the PLC. The PLC will take care of all these things. IoT will be integrated on top of that so that I can monitor it throughout the year in my mobile or web browser. So this is one of the idea which we can convert it to a usable thing. We'll slightly move faster because we have another 17 minutes left. 7 minutes left. So till now we have seen that there is a PLC which is deployed in field, and there is a need for remote viewing or remote controlling the PLC. That is where we are introducing IoT. Now it is called.
Shivkumar sir, afternoon we have a separate session on IoT and IIoT, industrial IoT.
Right, sir. In that case, I'll skip this one. Thank you.
Okay.
Right, sir. I will go forward now.
Okay, thank you.
So I think this topic will be covered in your second half session. we have a quality control thing, which we have already discussed, I think. And I think this kind of things will be covered in the afternoon session. So now we are moving into the SCADA. So right now, what we have discussed is that we have the PLC which is deployed in the field, and we have a way to remote monitoring with IoT. But are we confined with IoT alone? Do we have any?
Sir, sorry for the interruption. Once again, we have a separate, complete Monday, full day. We have a SCADA session also, sir. Okay.
Right, sir. This is a very quick overview of what we are going to do.
Okay, right.
Maximum of 3 slides. So with that, we'll conclude this.
Okay.
So until now, what we have seen that we have a PLC which is deployed in the field and it is doing some kind of automation. Now we need to have a remote access for this PLC, either getting the data or controlling it. So for that, one point we have discussed IoT. I think the IoT session will have an in-depth information on how we are going to do that. And you have the SCADA session also in upcoming ways where you will be having a in-depth data. But what is SCADA? What is the purpose of SCADA? The SCADA purpose is that it is a supervisory control and data acquisition system which can collect the data from the PLC and present it in the usable way. I have a PLC which is installed in the field, and we have a remote terminal system which has the SCADA protocol which is available, which can connect it to the PLC and take the data and present it in the usable way. So how exactly the SCADA can capture all these things? What is the big deal of using SCADA? This is a simple system, simple PLC system, which I have inputs and outputs, which is connected to the PLC. What is the need of SCADA? I can see that it is a very simple system. There is no need for remote access. There is no need for data collection. And why should we use SCADA? Because a simple application doesn't require too much of complicated setups to monitor it. But when we are seeing this is the full flow of an industry where the raw materials are starting from the left-hand side, going to a hell lot of processes, and finally it is reaching the output. And there are hundreds of machines operating in between and hundreds of sensors operating in between. How do we monitor it? We have the PLC, yes, we can programming it and it can control this. But how do I make all these 100 numbers of machines and 100 numbers of sensors being monitored in a structured way? This is where the SCADA is coming in. The SCADA is coming in as a front end for you and programmable and controllable interface, and it has the architecture of doing all these things in this way. SCADA can be programmed and it is being integrated as HMI, and it can connect it to the PLC and it can control the equipments. But when we are going into this kind of complicated setup or the whole process of the manufacturing industry, this is where the SCADA is very useful. I'll put a complete block diagram or complete thing which can be monitored in a single window of all the machineries, and even I'll be able to take action against anything which is going wrong. So this is how the SCADA is coming into picture. If the PLC field implementation alone is not
red color.
Sorry.
So proceed, sir.
Right, sir. Okay. So now we are concluding the session now with this SCADA. So we have 3 more minutes left here now. So you have any questions or any doubts or any discussions which you would like to throw? Now it's the time.
Participants, if you have any queries, please kindly raise. Sir is having a very vast experience. He is doing actually a lot of projects in the in IoTs, PLCs, etc. So he's having an excellent robotics lab in Europe. And if you have any doubts, kindly get clarified.
Thanks for your humble words, sir.
No issues. Chandrasekhar available? Chandrasekhar irukkiya?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Doubt ஏதாவது இருந்தா கேட்டுக்கலாம் சார். Practically doing lot of projects.
ஓகே ஓகே சார். நான் இப்ப செஷன்ல வந்துட்டு எனக்கு திடீர்னு எதுவும் தோணல சார். அதான்
Okay, okay, right.
நான் ஃபியூச்சர்ல அதை பண்ணிக்கிறேன் சார்.
Yes.
Sir, Chandrasekhar sir, how do you feel whether it is going very fast or not able to cover in depth?
நோ சார், கம்ஃபர்டபுளா இருக்கு சார். உங்களுக்கு என்ன விஷயங்கள் புரிஞ்சுச்சுங்க சார். நான் இந்த செஷன்ல அவ்வளவுதான் சார் பண்ண முடியும்.
Right, sir. Okay.
அவரும் some automationல பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காரு சார். சிவகுமார் சார், Chandrasekhar is.
Oh, that's great, sir. That is great.
திருப்பூர்ல is doing some automation.
Oh, great, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, if there is no doubt, we can close this session, and thank you, Shiv sir, for sharing your valuable time with us. Thank you very much. And kindly share your PPTs in the mail, sir. Many participants wanted your PPTs. So kindly share your PPTs in the WhatsApp or in mail, sir. Kindly send your PPTs.
Definitely, sir. I'll share it. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to take this session. And we look forward to work together, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
The
you.
participants kindly give the feedback of this
Thank
session.
you. 1 second, sir.
And the next session start exactly at 2 o'clock. The topic is introduction to IoT and industrial IoT. So it is a very interesting topic. So please be joined at 1:55 p.m. sharply. Thank you.
Surely, sir. Thank you.